Well, welcome. Nice to see everyone. Yay. So I'm Leah. I'm the gallery director at the Van Avery Smith Galleries. Normally tonight we would be opening our student art exhibition where we would share about 60 different works of art in different from both majors and non-majors, non-studio majors. And all of the works would come from classes either in the fall or spring of this academic year. Typically for the exhibition, artworks are selected by our studio art faculty, and a few of them are here. Wave, Katie, and Court. Oh, anonymous faculty. So normally studio art faculty would select some of the best works from their classes in the fall and the spring, and then we bring in an outside juror, someone who's an arts professional, a curator, a professional artist, and that person would select award recipients. We obviously have a unique situation with the galleries being closed and the campus being closed due to COVID-19. So we are doing this in a totally different way and really just asked students who had taken classes in the fall or spring if they were willing to share something that they had made. So I think we have about 17 students who have offered to share something that they've made this semester. And we are taking cues from the cold open. So we've been enjoying folks sharing things through the project that Alan, Michael, and Daniel have hosted. And so we're kind of operating in the same way here where we have signups, but if any folks jump in and want to share something else, that is appropriate as well. I wanted to turn it over to Elizabeth really quick to introduce herself and tell you what she'll be doing during this call. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Harry, and I'm the gallery director and collections coordinator, and I'll be monitoring questions in the YouTube live comment section. So feel free to jump in if you have any questions for the artists. Turn it back to you, Leah.
Yeah, so we know there's a little bit of a lag time on the YouTube, so we'll try to be sort of slow moving, allow some questions to come in, and students, we might have to jump back to you if a question comes in a little bit late, but we wanted to make sure that this could be interactive and that you could ask questions if you have them for our students. So we wanted to start this event with some of our senior art majors. Several folks were unable to present their capstone exhibitions because of COVID-19 and the galleries closing. And so we wanted to give them a few extra minutes to be able to share what they had worked on, what they were planning on sharing in the gallery. It's obviously not a substitute, a full substitute for their exhibition, but we thought this would be a good way for you to see what they have been working on for basically 4 years. So we are going to start with Michaela. So, and each student, I just ask that you introduce yourself, a little bit about yourself, your major, particularly if you're not a studio art major when we get to you, something about, and obviously you're going to share about the work that you made, but also mention the class that it was made in and the faculty member. So Michaela, we're going to turn it over to you.
Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Michaela Bench. I'm a senior biology and studio art double major. I have been doing like things outside of campus since I've been home, and like luckily I have the equipment to do so. So I have some things to share. I've shared a couple of them at the cold open. So I've been attending those almost on a weekly basis. So it's been really exciting to share that as it progresses along. But it's like really exciting to know that the work I have been creating definitely would have gone up in a show. So I'm gonna share my screen. How do I do that? Okay, wait. All right. Cool. So I'm gonna start off with this one, mostly because it's my favorite. They are not multiple exposures. I do a lot of work in Photoshop, and I've gotten like a lot more friendly with it more recently, especially with Lightroom too. So basically I have a series of these, there's 3 of them. So there's this one. This one, when it loads. And then that one. So with these, I've been building off of this concept that I've been building, which is basically like the interaction of identity and chaos and distortion that comes along with being in spaces that may not necessarily like be those of our own or that we're used to. The lights that were coming from my blinds in my room were very interesting. And so I was really intrigued by not only the things that they were doing on my wall, but then I also understand how me then being in that space alters that too. So I was just really excited to work with it while also putting on my head wrap and then also do-rags. That's like been something I'm working with too. I also have other images that I worked with. So like this one, this one, this one, and that one. I'm trying to go slow because I know that there is a lag, so just like let me know if I'm going too fast or something. And so these are building off of works that I had done earlier in the semesters, which began with this little frame that I set up in my studio. So my studio space can be altered and changed into whatever I made it into. So I put a little backsplash that was originally the blackout lights that were originally cut for our windows. And then I pinned it to the wall and set up this little studio space with this frame that was found in the basement that the vet gallery was giving away. So I had these flowers in my room that were halfway dying, not really, kind of. And then I set them up inside of the frame and then just took a bunch of pictures within that frame to see if I could not only alter the way that I looked within it and with the lighting, but then to create just interesting angles for myself. And then with a similar process as you saw with the other ones, I Photoshopped myself a million times, not really, kind of, into the photographs to make these really cool overlaying images. So there's this one. These, I enjoy the fact that they're very low contrast and they look really vintage, I guess. I think it follows the aesthetic of the frame that I have with me, but then also what the flowers are significant for me for. But yes, my studio, and I feel like the gallery would have just been a mixture of all of these photographs as you see them. Oh, not that one, but yeah. I don't know if there's any questions at this
Yeah, are
moment.
there any questions for Michaela?
There are a lot of well wishes. Rosalind Kyo says, "Yay, Michaela." Joelle says, "Love this." And Claire says, "This is fantastic." So good job, Michaela.
All right. If there are there any questions in the room from our faculty? No? All right. Thank you so much, Michaela. All right, so our next senior is Helen Duffy. Where are you, Helen?
Hi.
I'm gonna unmute you. Hi.
All right. So let me get this going. So I was going to have my senior show in April, but obviously that did not happen, but all is well because I can share with you guys right now, sort of. So I was working a lot with the concept of women and how they transition generationally. For example, going from like me to my mother to my grandmother. So starting in January, I started working on scarves, and I would take my grandmother's scarves and I would cover them in house paint, which is something I was very familiar with because I lived in like 12 houses when I grew up because my dad moved around a lot, or had us move around. And so I started taking these scars and using my conventions of oil paintings onto them. And it just felt a lot more like me. I didn't have the boundaries of the canvas, which I really appreciated. Here's some detail shots of that one. And then here's one I did in the fall, which didn't get totally completed. I don't think anything really did, unfortunately, but here's another one. And then my favorite one that I think was actually completed, in my opinion, is this one, my fourth scarf. And that one was a scarf that my grandmother wore a lot in the 70s. And I ended up covering paint over it and then going back into it with oil paints and trying to recreate those designs that were there using my imagination and also what was seen in the corner. Like, as you can see, like the corner was still there. And so I could use that to redesign what I was looking for. So I wanted to be able to use scarves to show how women are, like, we've always been seen as soft, and how you can be transitioned to hard, tough women through trauma and through growing as a person. And so I was trying to use my abstract paintings to do that. And here are just some more shots in my studio. These were taken on my iPhone, by the way, right before I left campus. So not the best shots, but this was my mess of a studio. I was also working on big wooden panels that I had just cut up like a week before COVID and that announcement went out. And I was going to make these into like this giant sculpture that had all of these paintings connected to it. But here are some of them individually. Obviously the sculpture wasn't made, but I really had a lot of fun working on unconventional shapes and forms and trying to see what I could get out of those. I'm not really sure where the sculpture would have gone. I haven't really thought about my show that much because it's hard to think about because I really wanted it to happen. But yeah, here are just some of my little fun, they're like almost like Lego puzzle pieces. But yeah, that was Woman. There we are.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys.
Joelle asks, which one is your favorite?
Oh God. I think the scarf that I showed that I said was resolved is probably my favorite. I really like the puzzle pieces too, but I think that scarf for sure was my favorite. The like 70s retro looking one.
Awesome. Are there other questions? All right, thank you, Helen.
Oh no.
Did Katie have a question?
Yeah.
I don't know how to raise my hand. So I'm raising the person, and it's obviously not working. I'm sorry, Leah. Helen, I'm curious. I'm going to be really excited when these puzzle pieces get actually put together. Is there going to be something that you think you could eventually do in a space and document, or do you have any possible plans for how those will come together and maybe benefit you in the future?
Yeah, for sure. I've actually been talking with my mom about that a lot. And we know a couple gallery owners in Wilmington, North Carolina, where I'm from. And so I'm hoping I can set up in there at least temporarily. But I need to go get all my work first because everything's currently still at my studio at Davidson. But that's the goal, to at least like get some shots so I can make an online gallery in a way so that people can see it. But yeah.
Helen, I have two more questions for you. Rosalind asks, can you speak a little about the juxtaposition of household home improvement materials with soft cloth?
Yeah, for sure. So when I was growing up, my dad built a lot of houses, and we would just build a house, move into it, a couple months later, move out, move into a new one. And it was always like really hard wooden things we were working with, always working with brick, really heavy, harsh materials. And it was always men working there. So I wanted to kind of juxtapose that with what like the women's jobs usually are, which like my mom was unfortunately we're like in like a traditional household. My mom was always cooking, like the sewing, the doing the laundry, and those were always just like the soft, lighter things. And so I think that's just how I got that juxtaposition there.
Cool. Another question from an alumna. How would you have joined the puzzle pieces?
Great question. So I was hoping to do a little bit more of a lock and groove kind of thing. And then I'd also talked about maybe putting some steel rods in it, which I wasn't a big fan of. But I was also considering using really heavy utility nails to just like put into the wall and almost have it like a growing painting coming out in a way. But that was one of the things I was definitely going to have to grapple with the last couple weeks leading up to my show. But that'll be a question for the future. Great question for sure.
Cool. And Joelle says, does the installation need to be in a gallery? Maybe it makes sense to install it in an abandoned house.
Ooh. Go out here with the real commentary. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Helen.
Of course.
So I think our last senior studio major did have her exhibition, but can present now as well. And so from here on out, the students will present 1 or 2 pieces that they've been working on. So Rebecca, you are up.
Hi, hello. I'm hoping that this goes okay since I'm not presenting pictures, I'm presenting a video and we've been having trouble with that. But yeah, as Leah said, I'm a senior studio art major. I was lucky enough to have my exhibition back in January. And so the work that I'm doing now is, or what I'm going to show is from my advanced digital art class with Joelle. And it's something I've been working on since February. And it's really come together in the past 2 weeks. So basically, the idea or story comes from my grandmother who recently passed away, but I spent a lot of time with her over spring break, just listening to her stories. And this was always one of my favorite. It was her telling me about this like great flood of 1955 that hit our town and how she was separated from my grandfather. And kind of what procured during that time. So I'm hoping that this goes okay in terms of okay. So you can see.
Can anyone explain the thrill of a kiss? No, no, no. But when two eager lips are pressed against yours, you know, yes, you know. Can anyone explain the thrill of a kiss? No.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Lydia Lorenzen says, well done. And Suzanne Churchill says, love the retro mode and aesthetics, which feels very current and contemporary at the same time. And Joelle says, what a tribute to your grandmother. Kristen asks, are those real photos?
I think that's my sister who asked that question, so she knows the answer. Yeah, they are. I spent a lot of time going through a bunch of old photographs, which has been really fun to uncover some gems.
For sharing that. All right. Any other questions, or we're moving on? All right. So I did not tell the student the order that they're going in, so hopefully you're all ready. How about Chloe?
Okay, yeah, I can try to screen share. Well, I can talk about it a little bit first, actually. So,
introduce yourself.
Oh, okay. Let me start over. Hi, I'm Chloe. I'm a junior art major. I'm currently in junior capstone, and I'm in Intro to Digital Art with Joelle. And last semester, I was abroad in Morocco. I was studying migration and transnational identity. And so I'm going to show an animation that includes different paintings from last semester and this semester. One of them is from Morocco, and 3 of them are from, like, since I've been home. I'm in Brooklyn. And so they're kind of isolation based. So let me try to share that now. Can you see it? Okay. Yoo-hoo. Hello. Ooh. 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 Oh. So could you hear that also? Okay, awesome. Yep, so that was my piece.
Any questions?
Suzanne says, love to see you in your home turf. Perfect setting for your brilliant aesthetics.
Thank you.
All right. All right.
And it looks like Sophia says, hi, Chloe.
Hello, Sophia. I love you.
All right. How about Sarah? Thanks, Chloe.
Sure. Let me just share my screen. Can you guys see it? Okay, yes. So I'm Sarah. I'm a sophomore and I'm a studio art major. I'm currently in Charleston, South Carolina, but I'm from Johannesburg, South Africa. And these 2 works are works I've been doing in my advanced painting class with Katie. And they don't have titles yet because I'm still working on them, but they each on 48 by 48 inch canvases, and they're done in oil paint. And in these works, I was exploring my own changing relationship with South African fabrics, depending on my landscape. And I like the idea that the fabrics can either be seen as really connected to the landscape by the way they're embedded, or very disconnected, depending on how the viewer relates to the landscape and thinks about what it's depicting. So this idea of connection or disconnection, according to one's like perception and perspective, is really what I was trying to comment on through these works, and through looking at my own changing relationship with these fabrics since moving to America from South Africa, and how this changing landscape has affected my views. So yeah, that was basically like the concept behind these two works. And as I say, they're not done, but yeah, this is what I have so far.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Katie, you have any questions? No.
I'm sorry, I was unmuting myself.
Oh.
Sarah and I actually talked this morning.
Yeah.
So it's great to see her twice in a day. We were speaking about some of the work as a narrative base, and because the images are so big, being 4 foot by 4 foot, they really allow you to kind of enter into the landscape. And it seems like they've been very, they've shifted in her perspective as Americans have actually been interpreting them versus South Africans. So I think that's a really curious space. And she's been asking other people for feedback who have American eyes to actually look at the work, to kind of decode what that means through an American gaze versus through a South African gaze. So I think that's one really interesting space, and perhaps something that the group as a whole could give commentary on to Sarah. But
Yeah, if anyone has anything, that would be great. I mean, it's like very different changing your art for your audience. So I'm like still like seeing how that goes, but yeah.
Well, we're capturing the chat from the YouTube, so we'll pass along any feedback if there's any in there.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, were there any other questions?
Yeah, our gallery intern Alice says, "Yay, Sarah, you're amazing." Joelle says, "Sophia and I love these. Love how the oranges are pulling into the foreground. They look amazing against the hard edges of the wheel spokes." And Rosalind has a question: "How has your relationship changed with these fabrics?"
I was actually just speaking to Katie about this earlier, and I was saying, I think these fabrics have always been very much in my life, but when I was in South Africa, I maybe didn't appreciate them as much as I do now that I'm in America, because in America, it's kind of like something that stands out of my landscape and isn't just a normal part of my life. So now it's something I notice when it's part of my life now.
Great. All right. Thank you, Sarah. Next up is Mike.
Hi. Let me just share my screen. Can you see it? Okay, let's see.
Yes.
Is it there? All right, awesome. Still there? Okay, so I'm Mike. I'm a first year from Suffield, Connecticut, and I'm on the pre-med track. And my major is undeclared right now, but I'm planning to major in either biology or chemistry, with a minor in Hispanic studies. And the piece I'm sharing with you tonight is called The Ghost of Nature. The media's oil paint on canvas, and the dimensions are 36 inches by 49 inches. So I created this painting in basic painting with Katie in the fall, and the assignment was to create a painting that combined multiple images. And so I used Photoshop to combine 3 images by overlaying them on top of one another. And the first image I used was a photo I took of buildings on Central Park West in Manhattan. And I took it from inside Central Park. The second was a photo I took of a tree that I just found captivating in Italy on the Amalfi Coast. And that can be seen in the middle of the painting. It's like kind of blends in with the background, and it's like the blue color, the lighter blue color. And the third photo I combined with the rest was a forest image that I found online. So the idea behind this painting was to contrast nature's creations with those of man. And buildings and nature are inherently opposites, right? So I wanted to better show their relationship to one another. And I believe the relationship involves nature being ever present, even though man's creations attempt to dominate our sight of nature and like obscure its beauty. So, and I wanted to show like how in the current times, we seem to forget about the importance of nature and solely focus on expanding large cities and metropolises. So I think this painting gives nature a voice and shows that the soul of nature pervades everything, even man. And that the message I intended to convey is that we should respect nature and cherish it and not overlook it. So there we go.
Thanks. Are there any questions for Mike?
I've got a question.
Okay.
Mike, how do you think this painting has changed now that we're looking at it again? I'm thinking a lot about ecological changes that are occurring or coronavirus and how that has affected New York City.
Yeah.
And I'm finding it impossible to not read your painting through that knowledge. How do you think that's changed the message of your painting?
So I think it's very unique, the situation we're in now, and especially like, I didn't even realize the connection with New York and how it's like the worst in the world right now, but it's interesting to look through that lens. And I think it just shows like the sheer power of nature and how like nature's kind of taking its revenge on us now for like all the harm we've done to it over the last years and how bad global warming has gotten. So I just think, yeah, it has a unique relationship, or we have a unique relationship with nature. That answers your question.
Great. Great. All right. Thank you. All right.
On
next-
YouTube, say beautiful, love this piece, great job.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks. All right. Next up, how about Helen Sturm? Thanks, Mike.
Hi, my name is Helen. I am a senior art history major, and I just want to say quickly that all of this is really just due to Katie and her support, because I came into Davidson not thinking that I could paint or anything. I was an art history major, but I had to take a studio class for the major, so I decided to take painting, and I was so nervous. And now with her support and the whole department, I've realized that I can. And it's been such an enjoyable experience for me. So I'm sharing a couple pieces from this semester. And so I was in an independent study with her and Rebecca, actually, after doing basic and advanced painting. And I loved it so much that I wanted to come back and complete my time at Davidson. And unfortunately, both of these pieces are not finished, and they are at school. I'm up in Maine, so I couldn't bring them back. But the one on the right is about 30 by 30, and the one on the left is like 30 by 60 or 70. It's pretty big. And so my whole concept this semester was working off of scenes from horror films and black and white photography. I've always really loved looking at horror cinematography. And so I would have on my wall just tons of images that I would print off. And I also was working off of a few artists that kind of have that horror, creepy element to them, kind of like Francis Bacon and Oscar Kokoschka, who I learned about on my my capstone trip to Vienna last year with Owen Kiefer, who's not here, but hi Owen. And so that was really fun. So I think it's really nice to see how these pieces have been influenced by so many things that I've learned at Davidson. And so just quickly, the materials are oil paint, charcoal, fluid medium, ink, gesso. I think that's it. And so, yeah, these are the pieces of that I would want to show.
Great. Thank you. Are there questions for Helen?
Lots of positive comments on YouTube.
Thank you.
Yay. Thanks for sharing. All right. How about Olivia? Thanks, Helen.
Hi, I'm Olivia Nong. I'm a junior environmental studies major at Davidson, and I'm currently in Tyler's basic drawing class. So this piece here, I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. So this piece is one of the first ones that we were able to do that was a creative piece, since the class is mostly focused on observational drawing. So what we did is we had a live model come into class. So she's a figure in the middle and the bottom, and we were supposed to create a creative piece around it. So when I first saw her, I just really felt like she seemed like really tired and kind of in a gloomy mood, and it kind of reflected how I felt about just a lot of things from coming back from abroad in the semester, and everything happening with COVID. So then I kind of thought to draw her under waterfall. So if you can, here, I'm going to find, let's see. And this is a zoom in of her face. So you can see she's kind of blocking off the water, but the water's also affecting her posture and how her body is. And I'll zoom into the other piece real quick. So you can see, so I was really interested in also in how the water was affected by just coming down and what it looked like underwater. So that was something that I also really wanted to focus on down there. And that's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you. Questions? So as Olivia, you mentioned that you had a model, so you were able to draw from the model, but then place her into a kind of scene. Was that the project?
So we started out with the live model, and so we had her for several sessions, but only the last two we were really able to choose or be able to draw her in one position. And it was, I think, the last class where Tyler said you can now start deciding whether or not you'd like to place her like on your final piece. And at that point, it was when all the other schools had started calling students off campus. So I figured that would be best to go ahead and put her on paper. And the next week, when we were supposed to have class, we ended up not being there anymore. So I was glad I made that decision.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Of course.
All right. If there are not other questions, we will move on. How about Adele?
Hi, my name's Adele Patton. I'm a junior studio art major and digital studies minor. So I'll share my screen. I have two paintings I want to share and then an animation I did in Joelle's class, advanced digital art. These two paintings I've worked on in junior capstone, and my concept here is like basically like visualizing how the digital realm permeates in our daily lives and how it's like not now, but like when we were back to normal life, it was like kind of an invisible being that was just like a normality. And then here's this animation. I found a certain Grateful Dead song played live, like really beautiful, and I wanted to capture that beauty that I felt just by listening to it, and especially the instrumental part of it. So
our computers have gone crazy.
Can y'all hear it? Okay.
We are in need of electrotherapy. Our fuel tanks dream of explosions, tasting some phones and messages of people from long lost Earth. We are optical pilots of spaceship Earth.
So yeah, that's all I have. Thank you, Leah and Elizabeth, for keeping this going, even though we're home.
Thanks for participating.
Joelle in the comments has a question for Adele, actually. She loves the one with the white building and wants to know why that building.
That is actually a house I go to in Black Mountain a lot. So it's, I've just had a lot of good experiences there with family. So I usually use something personal in all of my pieces like that.
Oh. I'm not hearing Elizabeth.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I could see that you were asking a question, but I couldn't.
Oh. Joel has one more follow-up question for you, Adele. In the animation, what's the relationship between the figures and the vehicle?
So the figures, that's from a live archived performance of the song. And so I kind of wanted to like tie in the plot of the story, like the tragic love story that is the song, and also like the performers. So it's kind of like two perspectives in one animation that we're seeing.
Awesome. So there is a little bit of a lag time with the YouTube Live. So we've had some questions come in and we thought that maybe we could go back to a couple of those questions. That will also give you a few minutes to comment about anything Adele has shown you, and then we'll keep moving on if that sounds good.
So this is a question for Rebecca. An alumna, Susie, an alumna, asks, what programs and software did you use to create the video? And did you learn those programs at Davidson?
Yeah, so I used Photoshop for most of, actually, I think all of it except for maybe one scene is all frame by frame in Photoshop, which we learned in our digital art class. But because we were all sent home and like my computer can't handle all the other software, I decided to pursue the whole project in Photoshop. And then I put it all together in After Effects. So it's just Photoshop and After Effects. And I learned it from Joelle.
Cool. And here's a question for Chloe. Claire asks, was it hard to transition those pieces from paper to digital?
No, so those paintings are all on canvas. Most of them are 16 by 20. The one that I made in Morocco was the one with 2 figures, and that one is about 5 feet by 3 feet. And I just, from documented images of them, brought them into Photoshop. So that's mostly how that was made.
Cool. Thanks for answering. And then I have 2 questions for Helen. Ashley Epp asks, I love your artwork. How did you decide on the colors used?
Well, I love using black and darker colors, mainly red. I don't know if that's mainly just probably because of the horror aspect of it, but I also love pink, and so I use mainly just the same colors over and over again just because I like them, but I sometimes try to challenge myself.
Nice. And Joelle wants to know, how did the digital art class affect your paintings during your senior year?
Yeah, I feel like in digital art, I really gathered so many source materials from movies and animation, and that completely transferred over to painting. And I even really feel like I was trying to capture the idea of like a photo montage through painting that I wasn't really able to in digital. So I feel like it was really beneficial for me to have that kind of class.
Awesome. We are caught up on YouTube questions, so we can keep on moving.
Awesome. So we will move on to Marinelle.
Hi, my name is Marinelle. I'm a recently declared studio art major as of October, and I'm a sophomore. And I'm going to be sharing a drawing that I created this semester in advanced drawing with Court Savage. Here I go, if I can find it. Just a second, sorry about this. Okay, sorry. And so it is graphite, and the dimensions are 11 by 56. And I began this when before we were released to go back home for quarantine, and then finished it while I was at home. So it's kind of a transitional piece in that sense. And I kind of used, I was thinking about like macro versus micro, and kind of tried to depict that in a figure form, and also a little bit about technology in relation to how we connect with one another. So this is kind of it from afar, and I'm going to go into some details because there are very many details. So starting from left to right. So, and I included this little person to kind of, after the fact, as we were all in quarantine, to kind of demonstrate some isolation. And please let me know if I'm going too fast. There's a little quartet. They're a little anxious, but still playing music. Yeah, and so it took me a little bit, but I'm happy with it, and I call it blue carbon steel, which is the name of a frying pan, a very expensive frying pan. And I don't know if you can tell, but the paper's light blue. So there you go.
Great, thank you. Are there questions?
Jane on YouTube says, yay, Marinelle, and very cool.
Court, you have anything since this came out of your class? No. Okay. Already have discussed. All right. Thank you so much for sharing that. So next up, Cole.
Hi, I'm Cole. I'm a junior art history major, and I hope this will work. I wanted to show this I made when I was abroad in Florence, Italy, actually in a class with Isaac. He should recognize this. It was a class on like Renaissance painting techniques, and so we made panel paintings and a fresco. So I thought it was fun because it was like a creative endeavor, but it was an exercise because our professors were two like professional restorers, one of whom actually had restored Michelangelo's Donatello. So they were both like really cool and famous. So we were trying, the whole point of the thing was to try to like do the panel paintings, as we were working off of actual panel paintings. So we were trying to mimic them as close as possible, and we did the whole process ourselves. We made made our own gesso from the like animal fat or whatever, and made our own egg tempera paint and everything, and then hammered the silver leaf onto the thing ourselves. So it was really fun. If you're a sophomore, I recommend Florence.
Awesome. Thank you.
Joelle says beautiful, Cole.
Elizabeth, did you want to go back to any of the other questions too?
There is.
Thanks for sharing that, Cole. It was fun to see something made abroad. So thanks.
There are just a few more questions. Claire Harbin has a question for Chloe. How hard was it to manipulate the images in Photoshop to make them animation?
Yeah, so that part actually took a really long time, and it was a lot of making different kind of clipping masks. So the hands are from the original painting in the animation, and so you kind of trace pieces of each painting and you can cut them out and layer it like that, and then you can drag those layers into other images. So that's how I got the hands to go across the different paintings. And then the layer of purple is a shape that I made in Photoshop. So it's a lot of, like Rebecca was saying, like frame by frame animation, which you then bring into After Effects. And that's how you can put the sound in. And I made all the sound effects. Like, yeah. So that was fun.
And then I've got a question for Marinelle. Susan Cook asks, can you tell us a little bit about the small characters? Why them?
I think I'd just been influenced by little comics in the New Yorker that's kind of been in my house growing up. And I think I was pretty inspired by a large image of people and really wanted to kind of add little people on the surface. It was just kind of something I wanted to do.
Awesome. And Rosalind says, congratulations on the award at Convocation today, Cole. Good job. Congratulations to Rebecca also for getting PBK.
All right. Okay, so our next person is Kai Kai.
Hello, I'm Kai Kai. I'm from China, and I'm currently in Professor Starr's advanced printmaking. And let me share my screen. So these are two art that I made during quarantine. Like, I'm staying in my friend's house, so like the materials are very limited. So our professor gave us a material kit. So I just used the wax and crayon and some watercolor, and I also picked some food dye. And I melt the wax with a blowtorch through the fans, so you can see there are like some fans patterns on here. And then I covered it with wax and crayon, because crayon is made of wax too, so it can mix together. I was trying to explore the polarity and fluidity of those materials, because when wax is like still like hot, you can blow it to everywhere and it just like spread across the paper. And when you apply materials in it, they can just become really like small granules and float in wax. But as long as it gets dry, the wax, though, you cannot paint on it. So you can see like those ink that I covered on wax is still very like wet, because they cannot mix with wax. Then based on the shape of the burnt and the crayon, I just add some watercolors around it, because it cannot go on the top. So I made, because it looks, for me, it's like a fish. So I just paint like the fish tails and some like water patterns around it with my watercolor. And for this one, I still use the same materials. Like I apply the food dye, and I apply the yellow and blue food dye, but then they mix it together to have like a green color. And you can see it's kind of like, it's like granules. It's not like a fluid color. And also because I applied a really like thick wax layer, so it just kind of crack in the future. Like after I made, like I let it dry for like several hours, and I found it really interesting. Like this materials just mix really well, because this project is called, this assignment is called Capture the Essence. So I think I really like try to explore like the different, like try to reach an equilibrium between different materials.
Awesome. They're really beautiful.
Rosalind wants to know, Kai, were you influenced by Chinese ink painting aesthetics?
Not in this one. I was trying to like in the several ones I was trying to use to manipulate like the limited materials that the professor gave us, and I was trying to see the fluidity, because the wax has really different like qualities when it's dry and when it's wet. So I was trying to explore that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll give it a second for the YouTube to catch up. Anything else, Elizabeth?
Yeah, we've got a question for Michaela. Susie wants to know, what was your decision process regarding how you place the overlapping images and beams of light through the blinds?
I only had one actual final image in my head for any of those. Like there was only one thing I was trying to accomplish with one of them. But it was kind of at random. Photoshop does this really cool thing where you can get it to overlay and underlay and have the images kind of converge on one another, so they do look like they're like photographed at the same time, just in different movements. But I was more worried about seeing if I could get myself to kind of merge into the lights, but then also still have kind of like After Effects or shadows kind of coming back through. So it was kind of more about rather the interaction between the photographs rather than the final image I was looking for. And it all depends on the movement that, like wherever I place them, that would happen. It just happened to be that the final placements is where I found the most interesting interactions.
Thank you. All right. And I think there were a couple of questions that came in for Kai, right?
Yes, Joelle wants to know, how thick is the wax?
So basically I just, for this, like the koi fish one, I just applied the one layer, and for the another one, I just use, because the wax he gave me, it's just a little bit, so I burned the candle, like the candle, and just like I used a blowtorch to heat it and just drip, like put all the like the wax in it, like a lot of wax on the paper, so there's a really lot of wax, but I don't know like how much exactly.
Tyler wants to know, he says, great use of the blowtorch, and is that a tool that you often incorporate?
No, that's the first time I tried it, because I need to melt wax, but then I realized I can burn the paper too, so I just manipulate it.
All right. And I think there's one more, right?
Can I ask a question after that next person?
Mm-hmm.
Leah,
Oh no, I think that's it. You're up, Katie.
Oh, thank you. Kai, I was actually smiling to myself and thinking about all the possibilities with wax. And of course, wax and painting go quite well together. But I was thinking about batik actually, and the process of batiking fabric, where you add wax as a resist, and then you stain spaces and then pull the resist off and continue that way. So you build up color. And I was just wondering if you are thinking about continuing this practice and possibly exploring different methods that wax can be.
Yes, I'm trying to use wax for my final project, because that was my first time doing wax, and I saw lots of possibilities. For example, if you drip wax, like drops from really high, like attitude, and it would just pop up and just like leave a blank in the middle. I think that's like lots of interesting qualities of wax. So I think I'm gonna like use it on different mediums, like different paper. I think I'm just going to continue with that.
Well done.
Great, thanks. All right, thank you. We will move to Sophie.
Hi, my name's Sophie. I'm from the DC area. I'm a sophomore history major and perspective studio art minor. And I'm going to be sharing something that I did in Katie's advanced painting class. So share screen. All right. So I think this is just on my desktop. So this is a 3 by 5 foot wooden panel. That's part of a triptych mural series that I was working on this semester. So the materials were acrylic paint, a little bit of spray paint, collage paper, and I did a lot of electric sanding for the process. And the purpose of this piece was to be put onto an old historic mill house that was being renovated. So this is on Delberg Street in Davidson, behind the structure that has a brick house and the Hurt Hub. So that used to be an old cotton mill. So in the process of coming up for a concept for this, I did a lot of thinking about how I could make this contemporary, because it is kind of difficult to think of inspiring things about a mill. But I realized that there are a lot of people who are making comparisons between how workers experienced the 19 teens and the 20 teens. And in particular, I was thinking about how people in Davidson who worked in this cotton mill experienced transitioning from the autonomy of small family farming to working in this very kind of miserable factory. So I landed on a concept that sort of is about how there was a lot of repetition in that life, but in moments of repetition, I think that people can come to really like imaginative or anxious or dangerous thoughts about their life and their future. And so I think that it went from being like, what large themes can I think of about industrialization, to like sort of like an emotional study of an individual worker. So that's it.
Awesome. We'll give it a second to catch up if anybody has any questions or thoughts. And so we're seeing just the one panel, right? But you said it was multiple.
Yeah, there were 2 others, and that would have been the middle one, but the rest were not completed, and they were difficult to transport because they're very heavy and large, so I didn't end up bringing them home.
Okay. Well, hopefully when you return to campus, you can work on those. All right. We will, thank you for sharing that. We'll move on and then see if any other questions come in. We're in the home stretch here. So let's see, Landon.
Hi, I'm Landon. I'm a studio art, or a junior studio art and theater double major. I'm currently in Katie's junior capstone class. So I'm gonna show a painting that I started in advanced painting my freshman year, and it's been hanging on my wall, and I kept walking by it and I would just stare it down and just be mad at it. And so I decided to paint more on it. So I will share that now. And the title of this one is Love You Always, Nido. So in Katie's capstone class, I've been kind of exploring the concept of the American West and the Western, and kind of the myths surrounding that, and how it's like the imagery and the stories are still present in, contemporary society. And so we kind of have this history that is associated with like the ideal version of America, whatever that actually is. But it's mostly fantasy. And so I'm really interested in, I've been in the headspace of kind of that history kind of mode. and so I was going to be in The Refugees this semester, which was an original play by Steve Kaliski. And we thankfully got to do a live or like a Zoom version of it. And we're hoping to do some form of like actual live performance of it at some point. But it is set in ancient Greece. So that kind of imagery has been, floating around in my head also. I was a big Greek myths kid. So this piece is kind of going off of also the concept of like how particular places have a very specific history and are kind of responsible for keeping up with that history. And so in the case of like Greece, they've got a lot of architecture that is very, very old. And so they feel, or it seems like they feel a responsibility to keep it up. So there are a lot of like kind of crumbling structures in here. I have a few detail images that I can hopefully pull up. So there's layers of oil paint on here. I have Sharpie. I carved into places. There's some just pieces of text throughout. So I just also kind of with the figures, I wanted to explore the idea of everyone has like a history in their own personal life that they feel, responsible for keeping up with, just past experiences. And so this is kind of like a representation of like building your life after, something crumbles and you rebuild and then it crumbles again. So just kind of moving on while also being aware of history. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Congratulations on your awards at Convocation today, Landon.
Thank you.
We have a couple of questions for some people who've already presented. I've got a question for Sophie. So Joelle says that Sophia says your work has the palette of Wes Anderson's film, The Isle of Dogs. So true, a great compliment. And Jane wants to know what were the ideas for the other panels?
So I think it was one of those things where I was very much like caught up in the process of it because it was a lot of working in layers and sanding and removing and emphasizing different parts. I thought about having, I don't know if I would have gone with this, but I thought about having sort of a narrative structure. And I basically, other than that, didn't really have much of an idea. I basically was sort of like, certain places are going to be darker than others was basically how I thought about it, going from a lighter to darker. So that was about it.
On that note, Sophie, could you talk a little bit about the archive and working with the librarians to kind of uncover an archive in the process of figuring out some of the niche stories that you worked with while making those paintings?
Yeah, the rare book room, folks who work in the rare book room were very helpful. People who just work in the library archives helped me find some materials about the buildings and just some of the things that were important were reading firsthand accounts of how people described the lives of the people who worked in the mill. And there were people who would say, for young people, it destroyed their lives and stuff like that. So that was kind of finding that writing was a good inspiration.
All right. Anything else, Elizabeth, or are we moving on?
We're all caught up.
Okay. So Blanche, you are next.
What's up, you guys? All right, let's share this screen. I think let's do this one. Okay. All right, so just to give a little bit of background, I'm a sophomore, part of the class of 2022. I'm an art history major, just happen to like painting as well. Trying to figure out if I can double up or do a minor in painting. That'd be fun. But I think Well, do you guys see both paintings or just one? I think just one, right? Or maybe
one.
Yeah, just one. You guys see okay. I think you guys see the one on the right. It's a building, I think, with multiple people in it. But this image right here was a lot of fun. I was in the intro to painting class with Katie Sinclair in the fall of 2019. Really fun. I actually have had some painting background in high school, so painting with oil was really fun for me to blend and further my practice. But I really had a lot of fun with this piece. Every part of this piece, except from the actual making of the paints, we were able to make. We put the frames together in this class. We also stretched the canvas. That was something I've never done before, something I look forward to doing more of. It was really fun and engaging way to stretch, I don't know, build a canvas. I've never done that before. I thought that was really cool. But this painting, like Mike was sitting next to me, he spoke earlier. This was our final piece in that we had to create an image out of multiple images, hopefully maintaining a narrative of some type of our choosing. And so I've always been interested in the human form and the gestures that we can find in the human body. And I'm a huge art history fanatic, so it was only fitting for me to pick some art historical references and then try and make it contemporary. So on the bottom left, you have the Lachlan structure it's in the Vatican right now. The ancient Lachlan myth is that Lachlan sacrificed his personal opinion against the Greek horse when it went into Troy. So the whole theme here is, a study of a sacrifice. And so I was going along the line, and that each image here that's added on to Botticelli's pagan sacrifice sketch was also a sacrifice. You have Lachlan in the bottom left sacrificing his thought with the killing of his sons later from the gods. And then you have the pagan sacrifice where an individual is actually, I didn't incorporate it into this piece, but there's actually a goat being sacrificed on that table there. And then on the far right, we have a contemporary businessman who is kind of the unsaid sacrificial figure today, and women, but I just happen to pick a male figure here in that everyday, trying to bridge it to today, and that, modern people make sacrifices every day. But it was really fun for me. Big canvas. I think it was 49 by 36 inches. I'm also pretty colorblind, so maintaining the same colors was really difficult, because one day I'd come in and mix paint, and then it would look totally different when the lights would go off or something like that. So maintaining the same color was really difficult for me in this piece, but that probably explains some interesting color choices. But other than that, really appreciate Leah and Elizabeth and the entire staff for putting this together. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. That's awesome. I did not know that you were colorblind, but this explains some things maybe. I don't know. Fascinating.
Yeah. All right.
And did you have another painting to share, or are you just sharing one?
I'll just share one. It's okay.
It's okay. All right. Thank you. All right. We're down to our last two. So we'll see if some come in for Blanche while the next folks go. So Isaac, you are up next.
Okay, here we go. All right, I'm Isaac Scharbach. I'm an art and classics double major, coming in here from about halfway between Baltimore and the Pennsylvania border in Maryland. And so I'm going to be sharing a painting that I made with Katie St. Clair in junior capstone. So let me just share my screen right here. All right, so here it is. It's 40 inches by 60 inches, oil on canvas. It doesn't have a title yet. It's tentatively finished as of today. So here's and the slideshow went the wrong way. Here's a picture of her scale. That's my brother right there. Here's a detail shot. And all right. And so kind of a little bit on the concept here. So it's always been really important to me to paint from life. And so this is kind of a setup I made in my garage. But what I did was I took the chair out of the composition. So what would have been a familiar human aspect of the painting, I just totally extracted, leaving this black void in the center of the canvas instead. And the chair was also one that it's probably at least 50 years old that I got from my church. So that kind of raises a whole new domain of questions. And a little bit of context. I was reading some writing by Paul Tillich, who was writing in 1959 and on figuration. And he says that art is a mirror of our predicament, our human predicament. And that our humanity is not something that we simply have, but we must fight for it anew with every generation. And so I'll quote, "When an abstract or non-objective painting and sculpture, the figure disappears completely, one is tempted to ask, what happened to humanity? The question is pointed at artists with undertones of embarrassment, anger, and even hostility. But instead, we should ask ourselves, what has become of us?" So these were just some of kind of the questions that I've been working on painting this. And so I would be open to any more questions from you all, and thank you.
Oh, we got some clapping from Cord at the top.
Lots of comments on YouTube saying, "Holy cow, that's spectacular. Never would have known that chair was a painting."
Yeah, we got some great comments. It was a beautiful painting. We'll see if any other questions come in while our last but not least, Adrienne.
Oh gosh, I was wondering when I was going.
Sorry.
All good. Hi, I'm Adrienne. Thanks for staying put until now. I'm a junior. I'm a studio art major and neuroscience minor. And I'm on campus, if anyone recognizes Suntel. And since the campus has been evacuated, I've been kind of roaming around by myself. I was doing a lot of photography, and I think I kind of put myself out there, kind of literally channeling my emotions through the trees. And I was really interested in the forms, and that's kind of tied into my cross-disciplinary interests between studio art and neuroscience. So having said that, share my screen. So these are some just, photography that I've been doing. And because I am very familiar, or at least to my best experience with neuroscience, with these neuronal forms. And so I didn't regard them as trees, but rather actual brain cells and images I gathered from online sources and all these neuronal forms. They're mainly tree branches, but I wanted to think of them as some histology kind of study. So these are drawings by Romane Cajal. He is the father of neuroscience. I think this is 19th century. He drew these by himself, and he was an artist turned neuroscientist, and he literally left his legacy to this day. So I'm greatly inspired by him. And I was thinking of his drawings while taking these photographs. And that's how I started my drawing. So this drawing is called Arborizations. And I basically replicated all the neuronal forms that I was inspired by, both my photography and these online sources, and also images of the cortex. And in Latin, they both stand for tree, like arborizations, the arbor being for tree, and the cortex for tree barks. And so I was kind of playing around with those two major forms. And I would kind of trace around the paper. The paper itself is kind of pebbly. So with my ink pen, I would literally trace around the little crevices. So here's the little detail. This is a mix of ink, watercolor, charcoal, alcohol, this matte paste, pastel. This is the center view. And, whoops. Oh, the scale is 22 by 30 inches. And yeah, if you could imagine like a pair of scissors right there or something. That's how big it is. So I've been working very small scale, which is not quite, it's not something usual for me, but I was really enjoying the amount of time I have just digging into the little details. Thank you.
Claire says she loves the combination of science and art. So good job. And I've got a question coming in from the comments for Blanche. Megan says she loves how your study of art history influences your art and how you bring modern themes into classic styles. Is that a concept you intend to investigate further?
That's a good question. Megan Skell is a really good family friend. She also took the art history route as well into a career. But it was actually something that was recommended by Katie Sinclair to try, because a lot of my artwork this past fall was actually a part of my practice of constantly doing portraiture, because that was something that I was really interested in. But it was really weird how each of the portraits that I was painting looked really odd in that their color scheme looked like they were dead or from some far distant past. And so trying to take that and make it more modern was an opportunity in that last painting that Katie really wanted me to take a hold of. And so looking forward to doing more of that for sure. Just don't know when I'm gonna get into another painting class, you know.
Nice, thanks Blanche. And Rosalind has a comment for Adrienne. She says, though this is a different medium, your new works remind her of your large sculpture from last year's exhibition. And I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I kind of sneak into a wall sometimes just to see how it's doing. But I think it's going to be replicated in all of my artworks from here now on. So.
All right. Well, I will wrap up here, and then if a few more comments come in because of the lag, we can go back to those or a few questions. But I really wanted to thank all the students for participating, being willing to kind of share in this unique format. Obviously, due to COVID, we're all being a little more flexible. And I wanted to thank everyone who joined by YouTube. We had a really great crowd over there. And I loved all the participation with comments and questions. And one of the things that I'm trying to think about during COVID is the idea that family and friends who normally wouldn't be able to join us can join us in this digital space. And so that's been a positive out of all of this. Those of you who know me, you know that I am a true E on Myers-Briggs, that I'm super energized by people, that I spend a lot of time looking at art and going to museums and galleries and artist talks. And this has been really challenging for me as all of our museums, including our own and cultural institutions, have been shuttered. So this event, I hope that it provided for you what it provided for me, which was being energized and inspired by all of our amazing students. The work is incredible. So thank you so much. And I really am looking forward to when we can be together and actually see each other and see art in person. So thank you for joining us in this format. Elizabeth, anything else in the YouTube?
There are a few more questions coming in. So I've got one, let's see, for Helen. Anne asks, will you keep painting after graduation?
This Helen?
Yes, you, Helen.
Oh.
Helen Sturm. Sorry. I assume Helen Sturm. It's
yeah, probably.
Both could answer.
I think I definitely want to. I'm working right now with Katie and Rebecca trying to figure out how to sustain a practice at home. So I'm definitely working on a smaller scale, but yeah, I can't imagine not painting. So
Great. Thank you all again for joining.
Can I say one
Stay
more
safe
before we end?
What's that? One more question?
One more thing before we all end?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. My face hurts because I've been smiling so much. It is so good to see all of your faces. I didn't realize how much I missed you all. I am so proud of everyone who's shown work tonight. You're gonna make my face hurt even more. Just very happy to see you all. Thank you for participating and being a part of this.
Yay. Yeah. Well, thank you all for your hard work, and we will send out the link when we can get it. I hope that you all are on our mailing list because we've been sending out lots of things about students and past artist talks and works in the collection, and so we'll be sure to include this link too. Just trying to give you lots more ways to connect with art in this strange time. So thank you again for joining. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.